Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 5.79, and in this lesson we're going to talk about the sampler in single mode, all of the different functions and parameters. Nothing too advanced, but right now you might be asking, why would we want to take a sound like this and put that in the sampler? Clearly that was made from the polysynth. You could do all your additional filtering and effecting from there. And the truth is, at this point, there really is no reason for us to be dropping it into a sampler, because clearly we'd have more flexibility and control with it inside of something like the polysynth. Traditionally, you're going to be using a sampler for something that you can't actually generate inside of a synthesizer, especially just one synthesizer. So if I was like to sing a note, that would be something very easy to drop into a sampler. Or if I was out in the forest and I was recording the sounds of birds chirping, maybe that's something I could drop into the sampler. But I'm going to show you why sampling can be very effective when you have a sound like this. And what it comes down to is how we process this particular sound. So I've already resampled it out from the polysynth. And what I'm going to do next is apply a bunch of effects to it. And we're lucky today that our computers are so powerful, but in the past, you would literally have to continue to resample, and eventually drop this into a sampler to save your computing power. Today, that's not going to be an issue for too many of us, but for some people, that still is. So we've heard what that sound is coming out. So let's go ahead and just start doing some stuff with it. I'm going to drop an FX layer here. I'm going to put an FX chain at the start, and I think the first thing I'm going to do is just build up one of those extra analog frequency shifters. And this is going to be a kind of crazy example, so just bear with me because I want you to see first why I'm doing this. I'm trying to make a sound that we could never really generate from the polysynth that has or could potentially be filling up our DSP. So here we go. Okay, so that's our first effects chain there. I might add in another effects chain where we'll have like two filters moving in different directions. And what I could also do here is maybe go in and over this duration, I'll change the amount of mix just subtly. All right, I'll bring it up and I'll pull it back down. All right, cool. So we'll next add in like two filters, and after this we'll stop, but okay, so I can move this filter up and pull it back down. Oops, I selected the wrong thing. Let's do something a bit more drastic than that. Then I'll add another chain where I'll have a different sort of filter movement going on. Let's get something that's really, really noticeable. And then maybe we'll add on some distortion. And this one we're going to perfect. I'll just pull that way up and then drop it. Okay, so this has now all of a sudden become a much more complex sound. And maybe what I'd like is to be able to keep that kind of movement from note to note as I'm playing. I don't want the effects to be triggering differently at all. I want that exact same movement with each and every note I click, because we do have some LFOs and stuff working on that sound. So as I'm playing up and down the keyboard, unless they're all in re-trigger mode and everything is syncing up, I'd have to honestly resample it if I wanted the same kind of result. So I'm going to create another audio track. This is going to be the one that I resample from first. I could also just bounce it, but I, for some reason, enjoy doing it this way. So I'll take this audio one post fader. Okay, so that's going to be our new waveform that we're going to put inside of the sampler. So now we'll go into the sampler, we'll drag this, we'll drop it in, and just like before, I'm going to pull the velocity sensitivity down. I probably would use some, but I don't need these tracks anymore. So right now we're not key tracking, and as a reminder, we know right now that if I'm to drop on a span, just like before, if I'm playing a C, we're actually going to be playing an E. And there's a few ways that we can fix this if we go into key tracking mode. Got to go up an octave, I think. So again, as I'm holding down my C, we are actually playing an E, and that's not what we want. So I showed you before, one way we could fix that would be to change our main point of key tracking. So to play back from its original pitch to an E. So that would be one way I could fix it. But what I could also do is just completely change the instrument's tuning. So again, if I look at this and I'm playing a C and I'm seeing an E, what I should be able to do is just take this pitch and I should be able to pull it down a few steps. One more to 4. If I can get it just right. And now we're back in key. So whatever you want to do is totally fine. I showed you guys the loops before. Right now, I'm not going to show you that. We're going to be looking at the amplitude envelope first. But what I can also do is I can reverse the sample by clicking this button. And so the way we actually know this is reversed, this isn't like the best example. If it was me talking and I reversed it, you'd really know. But you can hear that there's a big gap at the beginning. So watch when the yellow light turns on. All right, so that's there. We have down here a dedicated amplitude envelope, and we have a new little parameter in here, the hold parameter. Okay, so right now let's just turn this into a gate message for our sample. So we're not doing any additional envelope control on the amplitude envelope here, but I can of course do what I've done before, pull up this attack. And we even have an additional shape control, how we want this to come in. If we really want to ramp up or a little bit more gradual. So let's take this sound and let's actually make more of like a pad with it. So we can, of course, play polyphonically. But right now we're clipping too much power. Very nice. Okay, our hold parameter is how long we stay at our maximum value for. So with attack and decay, once we reach that top major point, we start to decay away right away. With the hold, we can actually sit for a while there if we want. Maybe we'll set this to, we'll pull this down to just like less than a second, and we'll have the hold sit for about half a second as well. And you'll hear how this works on the sustain especially. So now watch what happens when we increase this hold. We stay there before immediately dropping to our sustain level. So if our sustain level's way down, we have our hold here for like a second. You'll definitely hear the difference. As compared to, right? So I kind of liked it where it was there, maybe at a second. Let's put the sustain up a bit. And let's also increase our decay time. So our decay time is going to occur after that hold time. Once it's held for however long we set, it will go into that decay stage before resting at its sustain. And we have another decay shape here. So I'd like to increase that decay. But right now we're running into that problem we ran into before. I definitely would like to have some release on this sound, but if I actually hold this down for the length of a chord, it's not going to be very useful because when I release, I'm probably going to end up running out of envelope space here, and you'll hear that if I put my release on really high, and then watch when I'm clicking and when I let go. Actually, let's take it a bit further in. So the problem is that when I let go, if I played at a particular point here, the release envelope is never really going to have a chance to fully kick in. I'm always going to end up being cut off here by the sound. And that's not what I want. I want a nice gentle release. So that means I'm going to have to turn on loop. And I'm going to hopefully be able to find a nice point in here where I can get a loop happening without too much clicking. Sadly, there's no snap to zero points on here. So I'm going to have to find something kind of in the middle so that when I do release, I have some envelope space here at the end. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and pull my endpoint up too. All right, so let's listen back and see if we can find some loop that works without too many clicks. Might be a challenge. Okay, that's not too bad. All right, so I'll see if I can maybe fine tune that. There you can hear our release stage is letting it go all the way out. You're gonna have to zoom way, way in to get this to work. Like a dangerously close amount. And so the one nice thing about having this looping is that when we let go of the key, if we are playing a long sustained note, we'll be able to have a bit of extra time to guarantee, no matter where we're triggering back in the loop, for this to have time to fade out to nothing with our release envelope. And we can set additional shaping on that as well. So obviously that click is going to get really annoying, but it's something we're going to have to deal with, and I'm sure they'll find a solution for that sometime in the near future. What we can also do here is put on an envelope. There's a built-in envelope to the sampler, so let's go ahead and just use basic low pass. And again, we have an envelope generator that we could use on this frequency cutoff or on a number of different things. For now, let's put it onto the frequency cutoff. Why not? Pull this down a little bit, and we'll have this open up like so. And again, this is running in attack time times as compared to percent values, which we've seen in many of the other synthesizers so far. So let's just quickly put in an envelope for this. I'm going to zoom this right out. And don't forget, with the release, we kind of want this to be long, so when we do let go, we have a nice gentle fade. So we can see that like so, and now maybe we want to add some resonance, and we can use one of these LFOs to control that. We can use the LFO that's just built into the sampler, as in it's not going to be able to control any effects. If we have them in there, we'll see that with LFO 1 and 2, we could control these effects. With this PLFO, we won't be able to, but we can control the resonance with that. So let's go ahead and turn that on, and I'll pull this down a bit. Pull it down a lot, probably. Decrease that depth. So it really kind of started out as a lead sound. We've kind of converted and adopted into a bit of a pad. Apart from that click, I'm very, very happy with the sound. The only other controls and parameters we have in here are things that we've talked about before. Velocity sensitivity. We have a glide time right here. So this time it just is telling us 0 to 1 second without it having a little glide knob. Not sure why that is. We also are familiar with these FG and these ST, single trigger, and then whatever the heck the FG one is. But basically it just means that if we're playing, we have glide time enabled. Right now we're not hearing glide, but if I play notes on top of each other, we will. And single trigger means as I'm playing up and down the keyboard, if I have a note still held down, if I'm playing in legato, it's not going to restart these envelopes. So you'll be able to see me feverishly hitting keys, but those envelopes are not restarting as compared to so we can hear that filter re-triggering each and every time. Also, our velocity sensitivity is a nice touch. So if I play softly, turn off that stupid glide, or etc., etc., etc. And that's really everything there is to the sampler. That's the whole instrument. It's all about what you put into this thing to begin with. I think that's what makes the big difference. And of course, we have the effects section as well. So if we wanted to put a sound in, run it through an effect, and then resample it again, we could do that using the same technique I showed you at the beginning. We'd add another audio track, we'd record the output of that, and then we would drag and drop that into another sampler. So in the next couple of videos, we'll talk about other fun things and techniques you can do in single sample mode. If you have any questions, please let me know, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.